Ever since I was young, I have dreamed about breeding and then producing my own horse. But what I didn't know is that my first foal would be a surprise, and that getting to the first ride on that horse would be over 5 years in the making, and one of the most mentally and financially draining projects of my life. Remember when I bought that riding horse and you guys were like, she's pregnant, and I was like, no, it's just a hay belly. And then my vet was like, she's pregnant, and I was like, oh. Then I ended up with a surprise foal. Back in 2018, I bought a riding horse who turned out to be pregnant, and little baby Tic Tac was born a few months later. She was perfect. How lucky was I? Until I wasn't. At 4 months old, Tic Tac jumped this gate, and by jumped, I mean flipped over, had the mother of all hoof abscesses. She still has grey hairs on her leg to this day because of the amount of bandaging that had to happen. A colic scare while we were dealing with said hoof abscess. She karate chopped her shelter and cut off part of her hoof. Again, just highlights, not even everything that happened. She famously shoved her hoof through a gate, got stuck 1 month before she was due for her first session of undersaddle training. But against all the odds, we did get her to the trainers in the end, and she successfully completed her first 4 weeks of being started undersaddle. And then when she was sent for her second session, she took a chunk out of her hoof and had to come home after 2 days. But that also is just, horses. They don't have a very strong survival instinct. Unfortunately, getting Tic Tac to and then through her second round undersaddle training was going to be a huge effort and would continue to absolutely not go to plan, and had me questioning if we would actually ever get to our first ride. It's just not happening. I just don't know if it's ever going to. So the hoof chunk situation set us back another 4 months because we lost our spot at the trainers. Basically during this time, I became like the queen of groundwork because I wanted to prep Tic Tac as much as I possibly could so that she was as prepared as I could possibly get her. And everything was going really well. But then, literally 1 week before she's due to go back, 1 week, she suddenly gets like a little bit of swelling on her hind leg. Nothing drastic. Get my vet out. Usually this is something I would just keep an eye on, but she's supposed to be going to the breakers in a week. So let's just make sure this isn't anything. Just to be extra precautious, chuck her on antibiotics, send off some bloods. She's on the antibiotics for 4 days. Bloods all come back fairly normal, slightly elevated. So we're like, yeah, just a very small infection. The swelling goes down and disappears. Then one day I turn up, she was down the far end of her paddock, and straight away I could just tell like, oh, something's wrong. Tic Tac is very food orientated. So when she sees me or sees my car, she immediately comes up to her gate. She knows it's me and she knows there's going to be treats. And she wasn't coming up, but she was looking at me, and I was like, something's really weird, and she's standing a bit weird. I run down there and she couldn't even move. Her legs were so swollen and she was so uncomfortable that she wouldn't even walk. At this point, I'm just like, what is happening? I've never seen a horse go from completely fine to 12 hours later being this sick. Long story short, for the next few weeks, Tic Tac was very, very sick. She was super duper duper close to going to hospital at one point because we just couldn't get the swelling under control. She, I have to say, was so much tougher than I ever thought she could actually be. She was getting 3 injections a day. I actually need to show you guys these needles because you have to appreciate, like, these are not just any needle. They're intense, and I feel like you guys need to appreciate how brave Tic Tac was. I'm gonna go grab one. Let me put you guys down. That's gonna make it easier. Just to show you guys, like, make it not focus on my face so you guys can see. Look how big it is. It's like as big as my hand, and I have pretty decently sized hands, like 2 times a day in the neck, like for scale. Next to the sweat scraper. It's like, it's massive. It is so big. I think we can all appreciate and say well done Tic Tac, because I think that if she had not been so good for her injections, we probably would have ended up in hospital. It took probably a solid, from like the start of it to the end of it, probably 8 weeks to get her back to normal, because even when she started to look and act normally again, we were continuing to monitor her by taking bloods and just getting them checked out, and you could still see that her levels weren't quite where they had to be. We've had a very positive morning. I got Tic Tac's final blood results back, and she has finally returned back to normal. That has taken almost 8 weeks now, even though she's looked normal for like a good 4 to 5 weeks. That's just how sick she actually was. Very excitingly also, I spoke to the trainers this morning as well after I got the blood results back, and they've squeezed us in for her second session of undersaddle training in 8 weeks time, which will work perfectly because it's going to give her a bit of a mini holiday now just to reset. I don't think it would be fair to send her straight to the breakers at this point. She just needs a little bit of like time off and TLC before she goes. The last thing I want is her getting sick again because she's stressed. I cannot tell you how paranoid I was in this 8-week time, thinking that like right at the last minute, the last day, the last hour, something was going to go wrong and I wasn't going to be able to take her. All right, we are officially 24 hours till drop off. Yes, that's close, but I'm also still feeling extremely paranoid because you and I both know tic-tac well by this point that she still has time to pull something on me. So until I'm there dropping her off, driving away, I'm not going to be feeling like that amazing. The vibe and the feeling of today is definitely like paranoia. That she's just going to like cook something up just to mess with me. What's she doing? Today is the day. I hope. Very much sleepless night. Pack the float with me. We're sending tic-tac on her way. Hopefully in 4 weeks time I will have a horse I can ride, but who knows. I'm gonna pack the float with her essential items, trot her up, make sure nothing's gone wrong in the night, and then we're gonna get this show on the road because it's time. It's time. All right, what do we need? Treats. It was finally happening. Finally. Keeping in mind that this is now 1 year since she has had her first session, so my perfect little plan of doing one session, having a month off and then going back for a second definitely did not go to plan. Unfortunately, the second session, I will say the progress trajectory was a bit more like a roller coaster as opposed to like the first time where I felt like she just sort of improved the whole time she was there. She would be really good for a few days, really progress, and then she would just have a bit of a day where she was like tense to start, and then she'd warm up and she'd be fine again, but it was causing like her progress with the ridden work to kind of be a bit up and down. So obviously I'm like internally panicking. It's just not happening. I just don't know if it's ever going to at this point, and this is like the worst, most frustrating realization. So I'm sure you guys can gather from seeing me almost have a mentee bee over some tension. Morale and my finances were both incredibly low at this point. But the trainers and me both felt like she really was trying to tell us that she didn't feel 100%. So we get the vet back out. We x-ray basically absolutely everything, including her back because that was something I was particularly worried about. But everything comes back looking amazing. So we sort of come up with a little bit of a plan. Maybe she's a bit ulcery. She's been through a lot of stress with the sickness. She's been on antibiotics. Like all these things can sometimes add up to cause ulcers. So we're like, let's just treat her because there's no harm in doing that. And I'll also get her saddle refitted because she seems to be a bit tender in her back and like she has changed shape a lot. And let's just put hind shoes on her as well because she's always had slightly low heels and I thought it can't not help. We do all that and she's a happy horse again and the progress just starts going up again the way it's supposed to. So I'm happy. We're all happy. Things are going in the right direction. And after 4 weeks and technically 5 years of waiting, I finally get to have my first ride on my homebred baby. To say that I was nervous in this moment is the understatement of a century. I literally was almost trying to get out of having this ride. I was so in my head about not being good enough to ride her, and I'll be honest, like part of this is a bit of a blur because I was so nervous. It's kind of weird. I haven't really had anxiety like this before when it comes to riding. At least like not to this degree. I did get it with Spider initially as well, and the only thing I can think is it's like whenever I haven't been able to ride because I don't have a horse, I seem to get very bad anxiety about how to ride when I do finally get back on a horse. I do specifically remember sitting there and kind of not believing like I'm finally up here behind Tic Tac's ears. Which, does anyone else remember that Instagram page from like years and years ago? And it was called like Behind the Ears, or The World Behind the Ears. I just remember that was like the most popular page ever, and everyone would always try and get their photos tagged on there. Someone in the comments, you must know what I'm talking about. Please let me know. Anywho, random sidebar. So initially I was definitely feeling a bit awkward up on Tic Tac. I had that feeling of like, I've forgotten how to ride, I don't know what to do with my hands kind of vibe. But I did start to relax and warm up into it, and I started to get a bit of a feel for her. I must say I was shocked about how sensitive she was to the aids. Like, you just lean back slightly and she stops. And she was super responsive to my seat bones, which is way more than I even expected for this stage of training. The trainers, Alistair and Ricky, had done such an amazing job with her. Tic Tac's mum, Peach, was always very sensitive to my aids when I used to ride her, and I loved that. They are definitely very similar in that way, but they also felt like quite different to ride. Unfortunately, her mum, Peach, is retired at the moment because of an injury. I have had very bad luck with my horses, and to cut an extremely long story short, I haven't had a consistent horse to ride now for almost 7 years. I work really hard to afford my horses, but it's been like a lot of roadblocks in the last few years. And to be honest, this is the first time in my life where I really felt like I wasn't sure if I could actually make the dream work. And this is part of the reason why I was really having some like emotional moments during Tic Tac's training when things were going wrong. It just felt like once again nothing was going to go right, and I wasn't sure if I was actually going to have a sound horse to ride at the end of this process. I'd spent more money than I should have to get to this point, and in a lot of ways I saw it as if I can't get Tic Tac going, then I don't have any other options. I already have one retired horse, and the idea of retiring a second at 5 years of age was constantly on my mind. Even now I still feel like I'm having doubts because I've just had so many things go the wrong way. But hopefully Tic Tac will be my horse for life. That would be the absolute dream. But let's just start with our first ride before I get ahead of myself. I decided to just have a walk and trot, no canter, because that felt like enough of an achievement for our first ride together. And then we had a little wander out of the arena, but like not too far because nerves. It took a lot to get to this point, and it was a massive thing for me to have been able to do. But I still had to get her home and start the next stage of training, and that would also not be smooth sailing because of course it wouldn't. And so first ride down, and it was time to bring her home. I still felt like I needed a little bit of hand holding for this initial stage because I was still feeling a bit nervous about riding unsupervised. She had been going really well and I just didn't want to mess anything up now. So over the next few weeks I was floating Tic Tac back and forth to the trainers once or twice a week, and there we were having a lesson and I was riding under supervision. At home I would just do long lining to keep her fitness up, and it was all going really well. And a bonus that she was getting really good exposure about being floated back and forth. Till she lost both of her hind shoes. And guess what happened? She got tense again. So if we were wondering what made the difference, it was at this point we were assured it was the shoes. So Tic Tac now has high heels, I'm not joking. Basically she has small little wedges that bring her heel up to the correct angle, and it makes total sense because low angles means extra tension up through the hock, through the hindquarters, and where to next? The back, which is most likely cold. She thinks there might be a little bit more food left. There's nothing. That's mine, actually. Excuse me. To be fair, it does say her name on it. Oh, today was a big relief to actually have some progress. That is probably the best she has been, and it was straight after she got the shoes put back on, so I think we've just ticked another box. Yesterday I was like pretty upset about where we're at, and I feel like this is just like re-energized me. It's been quite tough, so that was a very positive lesson. I feel very happy. But do you know what I still hadn't done? That's right, rider at home, on my own, like an adult. So this was in fact our very first ride at home on our own. I decided to do it in the yards because I was obviously way too nervous to be out in the arena, which is funny because she's clearly going around so nicely and quietly at this point. It's kind of silly knowing how anxious I felt in that moment, and also kind of frustrating. And I just remember feeling like this was such a big step at the time. But soon I started to get my confidence up and we started to do regular rides in the arena. Keeping in mind, I would always give her a little long line before I got on because that was kind of my routine and my safety net. We did our first canter, I want to say 6 weeks after she came home. So again, like, I took things very slowly, but I was very paranoid about ruining all of the hard work that we'd done up until this point. And the other day I'm riding her, there's dogs running, there's other horses running, there's trucks coming in and out. We have giant white bags of rubber on our arena at the moment, and she's just taking it all in, not reacting, just going around like a lovely, quiet horse. And I think 6 weeks ago, if you had told me this is where we would be at, I would not have believed you. This has been a very, very challenging process. And I'm sure there are like lots more challenges to come because horses. But would I do this again? Absolutely I would. And I absolutely have another video organized for you guys to watch.